Kia ora te whānau, ko Andrew Doubleday aho. Today we're looking at the Gospel for Sunday the 15th of August 2022, and it's Luke chapter 12 verses 49 through to 56. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I'm under until it is accomplished. Do you think that I came to bring peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son and son against father, mother against daughter and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say, it's going to rain. And so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, there will be scorching heat. And it happens. You hypocrites. You know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? I don't know how it strikes you, but it seemed kind of counterintuitive to me. Always imagined that Jesus is about bringing peace and harmony, and about restoration and making everything new, and not this. I've come to bring division. I've come to bring fire. And in the middle of all that was his own struggle with knowing what is just around the corner for him and not looking at all forward to it. We imagine that peace is Jesus's modus operandi. In many ways it is. Yet I think what we're faced here with is the reality that he's talking about that you're not able to read the signs of the times. And I suspect that it's true in every age that the same issues are applying. Because peace in its fullness and in its richness cannot reign where there is injustice. That's simply a false peace. Jesus doesn't want the status quo to continue. We can't have a world of peace where we have a peace that is benefit for the benefit of the few, but at the expense of others. And that surely has got to be the story of human history, where a few actually do extremely well and the vast majority are disenfranchised and left behind. And so Jesus is wanting to bring fire. Fire cleanses, fire burns off the dross, and ultimately allows an opportunity for new beginnings. And what he talks about here is about polarization. It's evident that families will be divided. It's so easy, isn't it? And some translations will lead us to believe that there are those who are the followers of Jesus and those who aren't. And it's the good people versus the bad people. Those who have said yes to Jesus and those who have said no. And clearly that's where the polarization lines are. But I don't think that's the case. And we're seeing it very clearly in our own age, in our own world, particularly in the West, where we have Christians lined up completely on different sides of the theological and political spectrum. And it can get quite nasty. I've seen it. We've experienced it. You find yourself looking at issues from quite a different point of view. And the polarization is not only strong, it's growing. And the thing is that we're all sure we're right, aren't we? We're sure we're right. They're sure they're right. Whatever side you happen to find yourself on, you've got this quiet inner conviction that you're the ones who have got the truth. Yeah, I do. Am I 100% sure? No, I'm not. But I'm willing to trust that what I've seen, what I've experienced, what I've grown in, what has been revealed to me is enough. and that I can trust God for where I've got it wrong. Polarization, this idea within the church that we think that God is on our side, that we've got God in our corner, that we've got God on our team. We surely have to. Surely it has to be that way. And yet there are hints throughout Scripture that where we actually get into that kind of space and way of thinking, God has ways of actually pulling that apart. There's a wonderful little story that most of us don't actually even recognize because it's only a couple of verses long. It's near the beginning of the book of Joshua. Joshua is in the story, he's taken over as the leader of the children of Israel. Moses has died. And now it's his task to lead Israel into the promised land. And of chapter 5 verse 13, we read this. Joshua himself is doing a little sortie. He's doing a reconnoiter. He's going to spy out Jericho to see how they can take it. In verse 13 of chapter 5 it says this. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied, "but as the commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Ooh, wouldn't there be an assumption that God was on our side, particularly for Israel, particularly with Joshua? And he's confronted with this being, and he asks him whose side he's on. Are you on our side or the enemy's? He says, I'm not on anybody's side. I'm just here to do the will of God. That's all. I'm not on your side. I'm not on their side. I'm just here to do the will of God. Interesting. So the question really might be, that's not the question, Joshua. The question is, whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? Are you on God's side? Or are you on the side of that which is evil, that which is not life-giving? Whose side are you on? Of course, as I said, we all imagine that we're on God's side and God is on our side. There's a passage in the Sermon on the Mount that for years I found very troubling. It bothered me. It bothered me deeply because I felt there was a possibility that I stood under judgment with it. We see this in Matthew chapter 7 verses 15 to 23. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus by their fruit you will recognize them. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Then he goes on to say this, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? In your name drive out demons and perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Wow. Well, if these people who do these wonderful, amazing, miraculous things can't get in, who of us can? And you're kind of left with wondering, well, what's this all about? I want to suggest to you a possibility. This is ultimately about who this is for. Are you doing it for me? God might ask. Are you doing it out of love for these people? Or is this primarily an exercise in power on your part? Is this an ego trip? Is this something which blows you up and makes you more? Who's this for? Is this to make you feel bigger and make you feel better and make you feel more significant? Or are you here out of a genuine love and genuine concern and genuine desire to see others around you become all they can be? Could be. Not for me to judge, but it's the only place I'm left to go with it. In the end, when he writes to the letter to the Galatians, Paul puts it like this. When he talks about fruit, it's exactly the same Greek word. He talks about fruit. He says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. It's in these things that we find the grace and the goodness of God. It's when these things are present and being expressed in us and through us that we can have a measure of confidence that we've lined ourselves up on the right side. That God is with us as we seek to align ourselves with God's purposes and God's grace. God bless you.